When you do decide to live abroad, you have to keep something in mind about the people amongst whom you'll be living. We will generally gravitate to areas where they don't have a problem with us as a race. And even if it's personal, they won't bring it into the system. And that's smart. That's normal. That's what we should be looking for. But there's something to be said for the way that we're going to oftentimes function socially and personally in these environments. And that is that you're generally going to face a cultural gap even when there's not a language barrier. Now, barrier, of course, can stop understanding. A cultural gap stops what you would call the metaphorical understandings, the non-literal understandings. When I refer to killing two birds with one stone, the reason why many people around the world would understand that is because that saying, that figure of speech, that idiom is translatable into many languages. They have it in Arabic too. I'm not sure if Spanish speakers use it the same way, but you know that it means to accomplish two tasks and get two results with one effort. That is one of the things that people oftentimes do understand. But what happens if I were to say to you that my favorite proverb, when I say you will not teach an old gorilla how to live in the jungle, or you will not teach an old gorilla the paths of the forest. Well, you can understand that it's metaphorical because I just said it's a proverb. If I don't say that it's a proverb to many people, they would think that I'm literally talking about gorillas and jungles because I like jungles and I look like a gorilla. But one of the things about we black folks in general is that we do use a lot of idioms and a lot of non-literal meanings. Like can't get blood from a turnip. Things like that. And that's across language. That's why not only does Africa have many proverbs, but most of these proverbs are not limited to one specific language either. They're more regional. Many people in Africa do learn multiple languages, multiple local languages, and so they may literally translate a proverb from one language to another, but it's a proverb and it's understood to be a proverb, so they take these proverbs and they then translate it into the next language spoken in the same direction going further on. But we are black folk, and there are certain understandings that we have even across nationalities. And then there are certain understandings we have even within nationalities, naturally. I mean, you expect two Bajans to understand each other. And there are things that many people in the islands can understand about each other, even when they're not from the same island. And then there are things that we New World Africans will understand. And there are things that all of us will understand in common with people from the continent. But we do need each other to a certain extent, psychologically. When BMPTs keep in touch with each other and make ourselves visually and visibly recognizable to each other, I am not saying that we do this because we're gangbanging. I'm not saying that we do this necessarily as a religious group. I'm not talking about that. What I'm referring to is our ability to relate to each other even when we are far away from the home continent or from the countries of the diaspora from which we come. If you are in the market in the Philippines and you see another black man, chances are you will recognize them, racially speaking. When you all speak to each other, you will recognize each other regionally, linguistically. If you are both BMPT and you've got something on that identifies you as such, that's even more. Let's say that you kept in touch. And then brothers that were not BMPT yet kept in touch with you two. Well, they're certainly going to become black manosphere educated, red pill aware. That can only help. See, not all of us are going to be able to leave North America, as an example, but we'd like to maximize the numbers of us that can leave. The reason being that it's exponential. The more of us that can leave, the more of us that can leave. In other words, the more of us who can leave, the more they can help leave. That's where it's exponential. It was like spreading COVID, except for a good result. I mean, the more people that caught COVID, the more others that caught COVID. It was exponential. But then you had to get ahead of it. You had to establish herd immunity to get ahead of it. But this is for a good reason, and not so much to spread a disease. But this is more like spreading an immunity. At the very least, the more who become aware, the more remain immune to the matriarchy and the gynocracy until it changes laws that subject these men. Now, when that happens, well, that's something else. And I don't know what to say about that bridge except to prepare for it before we cross it. Will they change such certain laws to make men pay bachelor's taxes because they would not subject themselves to the financial slavery to women? They probably will. I don't know. I think so. I just don't know when. But the more that learn about the black manosphere and the BMPTs, the more that learn about it. And the higher the number goes up that can leave. The other thing is that increasing knowledge of skill sets and certifications that are needed will increase the numbers of us that can leave and stay abroad. That's also necessary. We can't afford to leave and then have to go back permanently. Psychologically, that could ruin us. But when we are out and about in different areas, we also have to understand that not being able to come across each other that easily, because even though we know about each other, we may not necessarily know where each other is. That can cause an issue too, because you see right now there's some young brothers that will go to certain places and they will not know with whom to get in touch to learn. They will not know. There will be those who will go to, they may go to Pattaya, but they're not going to know where brothers hanging out. They will not know. There will be those that will go to Phuket, but they won't know where brothers are hanging out. There will be those that will go to Barranquilla and they won't know where brothers are. And while they can get along with the Thai because the Thai are not our enemies. While we can get along with the Pinoy because they are not our enemies. While they can get along with the Malaysian and the Indonesian because they are not our enemies. The fact remains that it is not their job to understand the black experience and to be able to relate to us in all of these ways. Now, you'd be shocked as to what people may understand politically, but you can't rely on that. I got a student nicknamed Hood Hassan. All he does is use slang, and he says, I asked him the first day of class, where did you learn that? And he said, from the hood. And I asked him, the hell do you mean from the hood? You live in Saudi Arabia. Your hoods don't say the same thing. And he said, no, I mean from hood movies. Those are the best movies. And I know he saw shatters because when he heard me he heard me use bumbleclot with one of the Jamaican British teachers, and he never stopped saying it because he understood it the first time. You'll find this, but you can't rely on that. Now, I don't sit up and socialize with him like this, even though we do get along. He's my student. I got a job to do first. And he's actually the best. Well, he's the second best writer in our class. Sometimes the first. He wrote the best essay last time. But when you need to actually kick back and relate to someone on the same wavelength, culturally, as a black man, it is not the job of your brother-in-law, who is Malay, to be able to do that. Ain't nothing wrong with him. That ain't his job. Just like you can't tell jokes in Malay or in Tagalog. And you ain't wrong for that. You'll get there one day, but you ain't wrong for that. It ain't your job. And even if you get to a point where you understand jokes, you still may not necessarily know what's funny to them when it's time for you to tell one. And it ain't your fault either. You'll get there. But you probably will never get to the point. You certainly will not get to the point where you are as funny as a comedian in Tagalog. And they're not looking for you to be. It ain't your job. That's where the difference comes in. That's why I'm going to say to you that we got to know where each other are. You see, there are going to be people that they don't necessarily mean any harm, but they may take you literally. They may not understand you metaphorically or figuratively. Or they may know that you did not mean that literally, but they don't know the figurative from the metaphorical meaning. You may be able to say to some people, man, ain't you a sight for sore eyes now? You say that to somebody that's black. If they're an English speaker, even if they're not American, that means that seeing them is a relief to the soreness of your eyes. You say this to some other folks who learn English as a second language. That means, aren't you a sight to cause sore eyes? Or it could mean you're a sight to remedy sore eyes. But it's one or the other, but they don't know exactly which one. They can tell by other things that are not spoken, like your facial expression, but suppose they're looking right behind you when you say it and not looking right at your face at the time you say it. Yeah. You may not say something like that, but you'd say it to someone that you know understands it, and that's okay. We have to understand that when we go to the places where they are neutral to us and they're fair to us and they can become personal friends in large numbers, that does not mean that they're necessarily racial or cultural allies, not because they mean any harm, but because it's just not something they understand well enough. And it's no fault of theirs. You have to keep that in mind. See, when you go to these places, there will be some things that cannot be understood and you can't explain it to them. And there will be times when you go somewhere and you'll be shocked and you'll come across someone and you'll explain something to them. And they'll get it. They may hear you make a reference to it to someone else that understands it and they manage to get it somehow. You don't necessarily know which one, though. Mutual respect is between us and anyone else that will share it with us, no matter what the background is. But understanding is for those who come from us. That's why I said that we need to be in touch and visibly recognizable to each other, especially in transit. I am not pushing the merchandise because I get any money from it. I've stated this before. I'm pushing it because the designer had a good reason, a good purpose, and I want that to be fulfilled. And BMT has his merchandise, which is good, but BMT's merchandise, as I've stated, it's known. People know about it. They're getting it. But we got brothers, young brothers, that are leaving. They're gone. And they ain't going back to the States to live. My son is one. That designer, I think, is another. Still waiting to find out where he is. And there are more that I don't know. I want you to be able to do the same thing and not worry about who you are going to be able to contact to learn how to live where you've gone to live. And I want you to turn around when you have learned how to live in a particular place permanently. I want you to turn around and do the same thing for someone else. That's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for that. I hope that what I've said benefits. Thank you for listening. More to come later, and I want to thank S. Jock for coming through on the Cash App, like always. My son is still outside of the U.S., as he should be. There is no plan to go back to live permanently. Matter of fact, he's a muhajir, so if he's not forced to, he ain't doing it. Better not. If he doesn't have a choice, he doesn't have a choice. But if he has a choice, he better not. But I talked about this a year ago, before I knew that my son was going to leave, before he knew he was going to leave. I talked about this. I said that we need this. When it is your son or your grandson that does such, if you have any, or your nephew, or your younger brother, I want them to be able to go to a network. I want them to have it better than what my son does. And I want them to be able to turn around and pass it on to someone else, paying it forward. Thank you for listening. As always, black heart, black mind, blackout. Black heterosexual non-select male power because they don't like it, and black patriarchy until extinction of Judgment Day. Thank you for flying with us on Jet Black Airways, where jet black is also a verb. Keep jetting black with us till the wings and the wheels fall off. On your way out of the Jet Black aircraft, after we have arrived at the gate, should you choose to punch the Cash App button, then please only put in numbers that are easy for you, nothing difficult. But more importantly, before you even do that, please go to the links that I put in my community tab and in, I think, 2 previous uploads and get some of that merchandise. BU Passport Bro or SYSBM. Pick up t-shirts at least to start with. Start the process of us being visibly recognizable to each other. This way, next time a young man mentions that he's leaving, instead of everybody trying to fill his head up with doubt, they can say what they want, but he will know from somebody else's experience that if he wears the right shirt in the airport, that he'll be recognized, and that he'll see someone and someone will see him, and that the ball will get started rolling where he can meet the network. We should have that, even where we provide training in certain technical skills to each other. So, that being said, black heart, black mind, blackout, gender, justice forever.